Hey guys, welcome to this lesson. So in this video, we're going to take a look at nutrition part 1. So this topic nutrition is going to have different parts, and this is just part 1 of it. Let's get started. So at the end of this video and the next one, you should be able to classify all forms of nutrition. You should be able to define a nutrient and describe all the 7 classes of nutrients. You should be able to mention some sources of these nutrients and their importance to the body of a living organism. By a living organism, you should always keep in mind that plants are also living organisms. So whenever we're talking about living organism, you should also remember that plants are part of this. You should be able to tell what happens when a particular nutrient is not present in the body of a living organism. So what is nutrition? Nutrition is the process by which living things obtain food. We define this when we're studying characteristics of life. So let's look at types of nutrition. So basically there are 2 types of nutrition. The first is autotrophic. The other one is heterotrophic, as we are going to see. So what is autotrophic? So you should learn this art of being able to define something just from the names. Biology uses some certain words that have got certain meaning, and just from the words you can be able to define something. So autotrophic is made of 2 words. The first is auto and the other one is trophic. Auto means by itself or on its own. If something is automatic, it means it does something by itself or on its own. Trophic is about feeding. So autotrophic can be defined as a type of nutrition where an organism makes food by itself. Such organisms are called autotrophs. An example of an autotroph is a plant. Plants make their own food through the process of photosynthesis. Another type of nutrition is heterotrophic. So hetero means from another. That's what the word hetero means, from another. So heterotrophic nutrition can be defined as a nutrition where an organism gets food from another. Such organisms are called heterotrophs. A very good example of a heterotroph is a human being. Our bodies don't make food. How nice it could have been if we could just stand on the sun and somehow we make food. But no, you have to work. We're not plants. Therefore, heterotrophs have to eat food that is present in other organisms, in plants, for example. So that's what heterotrophs do. So when you go back to autotrophic, there are 2 types of autotrophic organisms, or there are 2 types of autotrophic nutrition. So the first is called phototrophic. So photo means light. Whenever you see the word photo, you should remember light. When we say we're getting some photos, what you are actually doing is you're capturing the light that is shaded on a person that you are getting the photo of. So photo, it means light. Photosynthesis, making things using light. So phototrophic nutrition can be defined as a type of nutrition which uses light from the sun to make food. Such organisms are called phototrophs. An example, as we discussed, is a plant. Another type of autotrophic nutrition is chemotrophic. So chemo is about chemicals. Therefore, chemotrophic nutrition uses chemicals to make food, and such organisms are called chemotrophs. If we go to heterotrophic nutrition, there are 3 types of heterotrophic nutrition. The first is parasitic. So parasitic nutrition is defined as a type of nutrition where an organism called a parasite lives and feeds off another organism called a host. So this is where you sit on your food and you eat your food. You who is doing that is called a parasite and your food is called a host. A good example is this issue of rice. So rice feed on human beings and they live on human beings. Human beings are hosts and these rice are parasites. Another type of heterotrophic nutrition is saprophytic nutrition. saprophytic nutrition. So saprophytic nutrition is defined as a type of nutrition where an organism called a saprophyte feeds on dead and decaying organic matter. So when something dies, when it has started to decay, then a saprophyte feeds on its body materials. A very good example of saprophytes are fungi. They, as you maybe mushrooms. So mushrooms feed on dead things. If plants die, then the mushroom is going to be absorbing the dead remains of a plant. These are examples of saprophytes or saprophytic organisms. Finally, last type of heterotrophic nutrition is called holozoic nutrition. So, holozoic nutrition is a type of nutrition which occurs in animals in a special tube called alimentary canal. So, here is more about holozoic nutrition. So, this is how an alimentary canal looks like. It's about the digestive system. So, holozoic nutrition is made up of 5 steps or 5 stages. The first is ingestion. Ingestion is where an organism puts food in its mouth, swallows that food till it reaches the stomach. When it reaches the stomach, it goes under the second process, which is digestion, where the food is broken down. Once the food is broken down, then it is absorbed by the living organism. So it is absorbed such that it goes into the bloodstream. This process is called absorption. After absorption, the soluble absorbed food is used up and of course incorporated into the cells. So the living cells will take in this absorbed food, and then the cells are going to use the same food. This process of using up the absorbed food and of course incorporating the same food is called assimilation. Finally, not everything is digested. For example, when you eat maize, the cell wall, part of the cell is not digested. Remember, the cell is made of cellulose. Cellulose is too firm, too hard to digest. And of course, humans don't have an enzyme that digests cellulose. Therefore, that cellulose won't be taken up by the human body. It has to be thrown away. It has to be removed outside the human body. So the unused food or undigested part of food is going to be removed through a process called egestion. So this is more about holozoic nutrition. If you have been asked to describe the stages of holozoic nutrition, this is what you have to mention. Ingestion, where food is put in the mouth. Digestion, where the food is broken down. Absorption, where the food is taken up into the bloodstream. Assimilation, where the living cells incorporate and use the food. And egestion, where the undigested parts of food are removed or excreted to the outside. So we're done with knowing what nutrition is or the types of nutrition. So let's go deep into nutrients. So a nutrient is any substance that provides the body with any or all of the following. When you eat something, it should provide your body with any of these things that I'm going to list, or all of them. The first is energy. The second is material for growth. The third is protection against diseases. And the fourth is proper functioning of the body. If you eat something and doesn't give you energy, doesn't help you to grow, it doesn't protect you against diseases, it doesn't help with the normal function of the body, then it's not a nutrient. So there are classes of nutrients, and there are 7 in type, and these are all the 7 types of nutrients. The first are carbohydrates. The second are lipids or fats. The third are proteins. The fourth is water. If someone says, water has no benefit to my body, then they don't know what they're talking about, because it's part of the nutrients. The other one is mineral salts, then vitamins and roughage. So we're going to take a look at each of these nutrients. We're going to start with carbohydrates. Then in the next video, we're going to take a look at the others. So what is a carbohydrate? A carbohydrate are nutrients made up of three elements: carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So that's what a carbohydrate is. When you look at its chemistry, you're going to find out that it's made of three chemicals or three elements: carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So usually carbohydrates are sources of energy for the body. And this is what we are going to use to learn all the nutrients. First, you have to have an idea of what makes it up. Secondly, you need to know the function. And thirdly, you need to know what happens to the body if that nutrient is not available in one's diet. So, lack of carbohydrates in diet leads to a disease called marasmus. These are commonly obtained from plants. So when you eat rice, maize, and other plants, you get carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are in three types. These are monosaccharide, disaccharide, and polysaccharide. Again, there are keywords here which you have to understand, or you have to remember, or that you can use to define what a monosaccharide is, a disaccharide is, and a polysaccharide is. First, the word saccharide means sugar. So next time when you want to prepare some ziggy, if they just shout to whoever who is going to be in your house that you need some saccharide, because saccharide means sugar. Then again, mono means one, di. If you remember when we were doing ATP and ADP, ADP we said adenosine diphosphate. Di means two, so di is two. Poly means more than two or many. So monosaccharide means one sugar, disaccharide two sugars, polysaccharide more than two sugars or many sugars. So this is what I'm from saying: saccharide, sugar, mono, one, di, two, poly, more than two. So when someone asks you what's a monosaccharide, you don't have to scratch your head. Mono, it's one. Saccharide is sugar. Monosaccharide means one sugar. So let's take a look what a monosaccharide is and more information about monosaccharides. So monosaccharides are the building blocks of all carbohydrates. They're sometimes called simple sugars. So all carbohydrates are made up of monosaccharides. Why? Because monosaccharides are just one sugar, just one block of sugar. So these other carbohydrates, you have to join these blocks to come up with a whole carbohydrate. By the way, in chemistry or biology, those smaller things that makes up bigger organic material are called monomers. Then the thing that is made up of these small blocks is called the polymer. So monosaccharide is a monomer of carbohydrates. These other carbohydrates are polymers. Anyway, that's chemistry, just for your own information. In case you are reading something and you find the word monomer, just know that mono, it's one. So a monomer is just one thing that usually makes up bigger things. So what more information can we get on or about monosaccharides? So examples, or the well-known examples of monosaccharides are fructose, glucose, and galactose. So what are fructose, glucose, and galactose? So I'm going to draw these. So each of these is a sugar. So this is just one sugar, one sugar, one sugar. So this is just for illustration purposes. It doesn't mean that's how they really look. It's just for learning purposes. I want you to get something at the end of this video. So this is going to be helpful. So let's take a look at this table. So glucose, this one here, is glucose, and its common name, or its other name, or maybe a name that is used in place of it instead of saying the scientific word glucose, is blood sugar. That's why maybe I've cut this red. So glucose is blood sugar. It is usually found in honey and in blood. What are its uses? So glucose is the main substrate in respiration. Remember, respiration is the process by which living organisms make energy from food. So glucose is the type of food which is broken down to make this energy. Then the second type of monosaccharide is fructose. So fructose is mainly found in fruits, or its common name is fruit sugar. So when you eat an apple, that sugar is fructose. Next time you eat a fruit, just know that you're eating fructose. So its natural occurrences are mainly found in fruits, like I've mentioned. It is also found in nectar and honey. What are its uses? So fructose is usually used by nature, not by humans, by nature. So how is it being used? So for plants to reproduce, for plants to keep on having fruits, to keep on having new plants, there's a process of pollination that happens. So fructose is responsible for sustaining this process. Animals are attracted to the fructose, they want the sugar. In the process, they make the process of pollination possible. I don't know if I should explain how the process of pollination happens, but I'm sure you know. But in case you don't know, animals, when they visit a plant to get this fructose, they can have some substances called pollen grains attached to their bodies. In the process of trying to move, those pollen grains are going to be dropped on the female parts of the plant, therefore causing reproduction to be possible. So that's how fructose is used by nature. Then the last one is galactose, which has no common name but is found in milk. So galactose is found in milk. What are its uses? Of course, milk is usually food for young mammals, so it acts as the only source of energy for young mammals. They can't, for example, a baby can't eat solid food like shima, so they depend on this galactose for energy. So the next are disaccharide. So a disaccharide is made of two sugars that are chemically combined using a process called condensation. So if you combine fructose and glucose, you're going to get a disaccharide. The process that is used to combine these is called condensation. So examples of disaccharide, the common disaccharide are sucrose, maltose, and lactose. Sucrose, maltose, and lactose. So if you want to remember this, you can use the memory aid SML, so much love. So S is for sucrose, M is for maltose, and L is for lactose. Or you can create one that you'd love, something that you can remember when someone asks you to give examples of disaccharide. So when you combine a glucose and a fructose, you're going to get a disaccharide. We can also combine a glucose and another glucose, we're going to get a disaccharide. Or a galactose and a glucose, we're going to get a disaccharide. This table gives us more information about the names of this combination and also common names and other things. So, for example, the sucrose is made of, if you look here, it's glucose and fructose. So the two monosaccharides that makes up sucrose is glucose and fructose. You combine glucose and fructose, you get sucrose. The common name for sucrose is cane or table sugar. The sugar that we buy, the sugar that we use when making ziggy, that's sucrose. So natural occurrence is usually found in sugarcane, beetroot, and onion. Surprisingly, onion. Its uses are it's the form in which plants transport carbohydrates. So when a plant makes food through the process of photosynthesis, that food has to be converted into sucrose and transported to where it is needed. So sucrose is the one that is used as a form for transportation in plants. Then when you combine two glucose, you get maltose. So the common name for maltose is malt sugar. I don't know if you know malt, but malt is like millet or wheat, but not exactly. It's a type of millet or wheat also. So maltose is found in, usually found in germinating seeds. So like I've said, wheat, millet, they're like seeds. So malt is usually found in germinating seeds. It's used to act as source of energy for germinating seeds. So it provides energy for a seed. When you plant a seed and the seed is about to come off the ground, it needs energy to break, and that energy comes from maltose. So when you combine a glucose and a galactose, you get a disaccharide called lactose. Its common name is milk sugar. So its natural occurrence is, again, it's found in milk. Remember, galactose is also found in milk and lactose is also found in milk. And lactose is made up of galactose and glucose. Again, what's the function of lactose? Source of energy for young mammals, just like galactose. So all monosaccharides and disaccharides are called sugars. So whenever we say sugar, we refer to monosaccharides and disaccharides. A sugar is a carbohydrate with the following characteristics. So I know you already know this. You don't need to master what are the characteristics of sugar, because you are familiar, you know what the characteristics of sugar is. So the first is it's soluble in water. When you put sugar in water, it dissolves. Secondly, it has a sweet taste. And thirdly, is crystalline. So crystalline is that appearance of a grain of sugar. Just when you pick one grain of sugar, the way it looks with corners, that's what it means to be crystalline. Some sugars are called reducing sugars because they can reduce copper 2 ions to copper 1 ions. So there's something called copper 2 ions. When you mix it with sugar, it's going to be changed to copper 1 ion. The process is called reduction. So such sugars are called reducing sugars. All monosaccharides and disaccharides, except for sucrose, are reducing sugars. So the only monosaccharide, the only sugar that is not a reducing sugar is sucrose. The rest are reducing sugars. Let's move to polysaccharides, the last ones. So a polysaccharide is a complex carbohydrate made of more than 2 monosaccharides. Don't have to master this because poly means more than 2 and saccharide means sugar. So a polysaccharide is just a complex carbohydrate made up of more than 2 monosaccharides. Common polysaccharides include starch, glycogen, and cellulose. So we're going to quickly take a look at starch, glycogen, and cellulose. We'll start with starch. So starch is a carbohydrate in plants which is used for storage. So as I've written here, carbohydrates in plants are stored in form of starch. So when carbohydrates are made through the process of photosynthesis, they are transported to other parts of the plant using or in form of sucrose. So they are converted to sucrose and transported because sucrose is suitable for transportation. Then when they want to be stored, they are stored in form of starch. So when a plant has produced a lot of carbohydrates and it wants to reserve or to keep some for times when it won't have photosynthesis, maybe at night when there won't be light for a plant to photosynthesize, that excess or that carbohydrate that is not needed is stored in form of starch. So once it has converted to starch, it is kept in an organelle called amyloplast. So what makes starch so suitable as a storage material? So the first is it is insoluble in water, hence can't be lost from storage cells. So unlike the simple sugars which are soluble, when you put them in water, they dissolve, starch does not dissolve. It has no osmotic effects. It is not affected by osmosis in any way. By the way, so what's the importance of starch not being soluble, or of starch not dissolving in water? So when carbohydrates are stored in form of starch, even when water has entered the plant, the carbohydrate won't dissolve, which means it will be kept there such that it won't go with water. Again, it has no osmotic effects. It cannot be affected by osmosis. Thirdly, it relatively does not react with other substances. So some some carbohydrates can react with other substances, where starch does not. So whatever you've stored, you're going just to find it the way it is. It is compact and does not take up much space. So compact means it is closely packed, or in simple ways we can say it is very small. So the way its particles are arranged is that it is very small, such that it does not take up too much space. So you can store a lot of carbohydrates without using much space. Finally, it is easily hydrolyzed by enzymes when glucose levels are low to make new glucose. So when the plant doesn't have enough glucose or enough carbohydrates and it needs the carbohydrates, so it can easily be broken down through the process of hydrolysis. So once it's broken down, you can easily get back the glucose or the carbohydrate that you want or that a plant wants. So glycogen is just like starch, but it is in animals. So glycogen is the main storage carbohydrate in animals. Sometimes it is called animal starch because it does in animals what starch does in plants. When there is excess glucose in the body, it is converted to glycogen for storage. When glucose levels are going down, glycogen is converted back to glucose. So when you have eaten a lot of bread, so the glucose from the bread is going to be converted to glycogen for storage. The excess glucose, of course, not all of it, because part of it or most of it is going to be needed by the body for you to do your movements. Then the excess of it, that which is not needed, is going to be kept in form of glycogen. And when you haven't eaten, you don't have food, that glycogen is going to be converted back to glucose. So that's how things work. Finally, cellulose. So cellulose is a carbohydrate that provides structure to plants. Remember, cells are made of cellulose. And what makes a plant the way it looks firm is because of cellulose. So what makes cellulose suitable for this? It has high tensile strength, which allows the cells of plants to protect plant cells. So high tensile strength means it is not easily stretched or broken. So cellulose is not easily stretched or broken. This makes the cells of plants to protect plant cells. How? If you remember when we are taking a look at the effects of osmosis on plant cells, when we talked about lysis and crenation, remember that part when we were studying osmosis, we talked about the effects of water on animal cells and on plant cells. So we discussed that plant cells cannot burst when they have been exposed to a solution of high water potential. So when water enters a plant cell, it cannot burst like the way an animal cell behaves. Why? Because of the cell wall, which pushes or which protects the plant cell from bursting. So what makes that possible is the cellulose present in the cell wall of a plant. So animals cannot digest cellulose because they do not have an enzyme called cellulase that breaks down cellulose. When you eat maize, part of maize is cellulose. So what is its important? Is it a nutrient? Because when you eat it, it's not going to be digested, because as animals, we don't have an enzyme called cellulase. So the importance of cellulose in food is that it stimulates the movement of food in the alimentary canal and prevent constipation. Constipation. So what it does is when you eat something that has got cellulose, it's going to make sure that the movement of the food from your mouth till it reaches wherever it's supposed to go is going to be smooth enough, and of course you won't constipate. So that's the benefit of eating food that has got cellulose. It prevents constipation, and it helps in a process called peristalsis. So peristalsis is just the movement of food in the alimentary canal. We're going to take a look at it very well, but for now, just know that it stimulates the movement of food in the alimentary canal and prevents constipation. So this marks the end of this lesson. Check out for the next lesson, which continues discussing other types of nutrients. Hope you have enjoyed and hope you have learned a thing.